This is probably live, right? Anyway, so I'm Alexandra Moxon. I do a number of things. So you probably know me as the host of the Advanced Tech Podcast. It's an emerging tech podcast focused on Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, VR, AR, a bunch of really other cool things. I'm also vice president of product for a company called Liquid. So not the protocol. We're a Lightning Network company. Sean is around here somewhere. Oh, there he is, Sean and Janice. Yeah, come talk to us. We're doing some pretty cool things in this space. So I've been asked to say, what does Bitcoin mean to me? And for me, Bitcoin is hope. And this is a title of an article that I wrote when I was down in El Zonte in November. And so I had the opportunity to speak to some of the original organizers. So Roman, who's also known as Chimbara. I spoke with Vitas, who's a personal friend. He's organizer of Team Satoshi. So he's responsible for the Fitcoiner movement, so people who are into fitness and Bitcoin and personal sovereignty. And also Chris Hunter, who is here somewhere. So I had the opportunity to speak to him. He's the organizer of Adopting Bitcoin, which is where I was at. And Bitcoin is really interesting. So the story of El Zonte, just wanted to talk very briefly about it. You can really see the community impact there. So, I mean, it's an emerging space, and you really do see the leapfrogging aspect, which is quite interesting. So, if you are interested in finding out a little bit more, just go to my Twitter profile. So it's Alexandra933, and yeah, I just give a good overview of what Bitcoin means to El Zonte and the people of El Zonte. Yeah, it's Advance, so Advance without the D on the end, because it's all about moving forward. Tech Podcast. Okay, so with that, I'd like to introduce the panelists. So, panelists, Bobby Lee, come on up. Just have a seat wherever you like. So Bobby is CEO of Ballet Crypto.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning.
So before I'm going to have everybody come up on stage, and then I'll give each person a couple of minutes to talk. NVK, CEO of CoinKite. And Guy Swan, the guy who probably knows more about Bitcoin than anyone in this room.
It's red. Have you read my book? Have you read my book?
Haven't read that one yet.
Well,
Nope.
So technically not yet, but now you can be the most read person.
Hey.
The book, Promise of Bitcoin, The Future of Money and How It Can Work for You, by Bobby Lee.
Bobby Lee, I know the guy.
Yeah, I've seen him too.
With this one pointed towards that speaker, so try and keep it pointed back. There's a speaker right there. Got it. Same thing, keep the mic out of
One for you.
I have one of those.
Okay. One for you too.
Check.
Hello?
Oh, yeah, I just... Check. Okay.
All right. Okay, so with that, let's start with introductions. NVK, please go first.
So I make security hardware for the last 12 years in Bitcoin. I think a lot of you probably heard of Coldcard and OpenDime and Block Clock and all that stuff. That's the things we make. So yeah,
I'm Guy Swan. Like you heard, I'm the guy who's read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. I host Bitcoin Audible, and I've done 14 Bitcoin audiobooks, and I do all the articles. I've done 600 some odd reads just so that you can listen on the show. I am an avid user of all Bitcoin security and storage options. I download them when they're all still broken in alpha and beta, and I tinker with them, and I love it. It's fascinating. But yeah, so that's why I know a thing or two about storage.
And Bobby, please
Yes,
go ahead.
hi. Good morning. So I'm Bobby Lee. I've been in Bitcoin since 2011, and now I'm doing my second startup called Ballet. We make cryptocurrency wallets, mass market, make it easy for everyone to really allow people to have their private keys in their own hands, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. And this is my second company. My first company was BTC China, the very first Bitcoin exchange in China, launched in 2011. So that business, it was a custodial platform. So now that I've sold that company 4 years ago, I've pivoted 180 degrees. Now I'm all about privacy, all about self-custody, all about mass market adoption. That's why I've written this book called The Promise of Bitcoin. This is non-technical for everyone. In fact, last week I just finished narrating the whole book, about 9.5 hours. I was in a recording studio. So the audiobook version will come out hopefully in a few months in my own voice. It was really tricky, all the alliterations and the pronunciations and all the long syllables and all that stuff. Anyways, it was fun doing that. I'm happy to be here. Again, I'm passionate about Bitcoin. I'm passionate about self-custody and growing the market, allowing all your friends and family to come into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency through the use of Ballet wallets and other products and services. So I'm a big supporter of the industry. Thank you very much.
All right, so first question. NVK, I'm going to give this to you, and then Bobby, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. For people starting out, where should they put their coins? And then also for people with more substantial holdings, where should they put their coins?
So I think it's like pretty well accepted that, if you're just starting out and you have a few $100 worth of Bitcoin, a phone wallet that you control the keys is probably a perfectly good place for it. As you start to have more Bitcoin, you should definitely look into a hardware wallet. Even a shitty hardware wallet is better than no hardware wallets. Yeah, just make sure that you reflect over like what kind of risks you have, where you live, how much money you have, what kind of exposure you have, and then you figure out what kind of solutions will best work for you. But it's very important to keep on upgrading your security because security is a moving target.
Bobby.
So for Bitcoin experts, the geeks and nerds like myself, and maybe some of us on the panel here, and for the early investors who have hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, obviously the key point there is diversification. Diversify how you store your Bitcoins. I don't care if it's on an exchange, in hardware wallets, software wallets, self-custody. Diversify, that way you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Because we know human memory is fallible. We know we lose things. We know we get hacked, SIM hijacked. There's all these risk factors, security threats. You want to diversify. Now, for the more important market, which is the mass market adoption, the next 1 billion and the 5 billion people who are eventually coming to cryptocurrency, for them, my advice, and this is through my 11 years in Bitcoin, is to really provide them with a simple solution that they can't screw up. I've seen too many people use self-custody wallets. I don't care if it's software-based or hardware-based, where they have to write down 12 or 24 words. A lot of people fall into trouble with that. A lot of people. You wouldn't even believe. Of all the people I've met and talked to, hundreds and thousands of people over the last 11 years, many people screw that up. I don't screw it up. NVK, you don't screw it up. But a lot of people screw it up, and then if you screw it up, you lose your backup, or you get hacked. Some people put their 12 words, 24 words, along with their hardware wallet in the same drawer. That defeats the purpose of an electronic hardware wallet, right? So that's why I created Ballet. We want a solution that's easy for people to use. And I love, more than anything, for my audience to upgrade, to be more sophisticated, to one day have multiple solutions, because their Bitcoins has grown from hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's when they should spend the time and the energy to learn other better, more secure methods, including electronic hardware wallets and other multi-key, multi-signature solutions, and so on and so forth. So this, security is a sliding scale, and also for convenience. It's always between security and convenience. There's a big trade-off.
So please don't diversify how you store your keys.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So let me.
I disagree vehemently.
Okay, great. It's very important to de-risk each of your solutions on how you store your keys, right? So a lot of people will run into trouble when they start diversifying. What you really want to do is de-risk each solution, right? So for example, most people won't get robbed. Most people have their, say, a house fire. So you put your 12 words or 24 words on a metal plate, right? And the chances of something happening to that now are much lower. Now, let's say you're concerned about house robberies or things like that. Then you add a passphrase. So now you have essentially 2 secrets, right? And ideally, you have at least one backup of this thing somewhere else in case you do have an issue with the location where the backups are.
But by definition, if you have multiple locations, that is diversifying.
Absolutely not. It's
How
still
is
the
it not
same
diversifying?
wallet.
When you put the same thing in multiple locations, you're literally physically diversifying your information.
Diversifying means you'd have
Having a backup. That's diversification, right? Imagine a private key wallet with no backups. Is that what you're advocating?
that's not diversification.
Diversification, a backup or multiple backups
Okay,
is diversification.
whatever.
That's an
It's-
English language.
Okay, whatever.
All right, let's move on.
I actually just want to say, for starting out, I actually recommend very small amounts on a custodian.
I agree.
That you should actually bridge, because one of the big things with holding your own keys and learning like seed phrases and how addresses work and all of this stuff is that it's a big enough barrier that I think the average person is most likely, if they don't yet have skin in the game, they're most likely to go, I'll do it next week.
Yeah, I
and then
agree
they
with you.
don't actually get involved. They don't actually start it until they're in a situation where they need it. And then they're having to start from scratch, and they're nervous, and they're having to do too much, tackle too much at once. But if you're getting like 20, 30, maybe even $100 or whatever, it's a very small amount of what you own, that get it, it's perfectly fine to get it on a custodian, on Swan Bitcoin, on Strike, on Cash App, whatever it is, and hold it there just to get familiar with it, to get some skin in the game and feel like you are part of Bitcoin. Then the very first thing that you should learn after that is what a seed phrase is and how to hold your own keys.
Amen.
And then from there, I think the rest is natural, and it's just a natural like, oh, I'm going to learn the next thing, and then at the end of the day, to 1000x your security against the dominant list of all the issues is just get a basic hardware wallet and use it. Like that is the one thing that you really need if you are putting real savings in Bitcoin. Get a hardware wallet, know what your seed is, and back it up.
It's also a beautiful chance to learn, right? Because you buy some Bitcoin and then you send it to a wallet, right? And that exercise starts showing you what is a Bitcoin address, right? Yeah. You send it there, you maybe send it back, you maybe delete the backup, you reinstate the backup. You learn that if you put the words back, the money shows up again, right? It's a fascinating thing. So just like play,
Play.
So,
Definitely.
so I agree with you very much. And for the last 5-7 years, I've been doing that myself, and I've been teaching some of my best friends and family to do that. However, what I realized is if we really want to get to 1 billion people, I personally do not think 1 billion people will be able to mess around with 24 seed phrase recovery words. I personally think 1 billion people will never get to do that. The current trend is that 1 billion
I think
people
we
will
should
put their
plan.
coins on exchanges, on custodial solutions. That's the current trend. More and more people are getting on custodial solutions. I agree with you for small amounts, but what's happening is people are letting bigger and bigger amounts on these custodial services, and that's why we want to advocate for people to control their private keys. So the point is that if you have the technical ability to manage your own 12 and 24 word recovery seeds, all the best to you. Thumbs up, I applaud you. And you should teach that to all your friends and family as best as possible. But what I've learned in the real world, not the geeks on stage, and not the geeks at a Bitcoin-only conference, is that the real world, people like my mom, she's over 70 years old, she can use a ballet wallet, but she cannot ever work out those 24 words properly and do a proper recovery backup. By the way, a backup is not a backup unless you've tested the backup. Does that make sense? If you have a backup of 24 words, you should clear your hardware wallet, reset it, and input those 24 words back into the hardware wallet and see if it comes out the same addresses. If it does, you have a valid backup. Otherwise, your backup is not valid. So again, normal people don't know these things. We do, the computer science experts and geeks and nerds like I am. My brother and I combined have 4 degrees in computer science. You guys probably have the same, right? We're not going to ask the next 1 billion, the next 5 billion people to get PhDs in cryptography, in computer science, in mathematics. Okay? So again, I agree with you, but I'm just pointing out that it's not a single solution fit for the whole world.
I actually pretty much agree with everything you just said, except for the fact that that's naturally going to happen. If you tell everybody to hold their own keys, you teach everybody about backups, you teach everybody about hardware wallets, and you make that the standard, they will still end up with most people on custodians. But that's why I think we don't ever have to say, yes, you should definitely just keep all your shit on a custodian.
Yeah,
Because
but as
That
a,
is the first place.
that's the default.
That
No,
is
no.
the default,
As
because
a-
that's where you get the coins.
Yeah.
as a betting person, since we're in Las Vegas, I want people to hold your own keys. I want you guys to hold your own keys. But
gonna be
my
a whole
bet
discussion.
is that
know, right?
the next 1 billion people, not all of them will hold your own keys and then have a backup. My point is many people in the end will have your own keys in a single-use device, whether it's the Satoshi card that you have, Sats card, or whether it's a Bally wallet gift card that we have. Okay? So again, for small amounts, maybe tens of dollars, maybe hundreds of dollars, right? But to have a backup, I'm not against having backups. I'm pointing out the fact that having backups is technically very hard to achieve for the mass market. That's
But it
my
really depends on how
real-world
much money you're
observations.
protecting.
Oh, I agree with you.
That's.
I agree with you. But for tens and hundreds of dollars, most people won't bother with a good backup solution that involves 24 words. They'll put those 24
actually
words
think-
next to the hardware wallet.
People
and then
do.
you waste your time.
People
I'm
naturally go there.
generally shocked at the
Yes.
number of people who will actually do the seed phrase thing who are not technical. My
Really?
dad still does not know how to attach shit to an email. I have
But
to
hold
walk
on a
him
second,
through
your
it over
dad
the
does the
phone.
24 words?
But
Yeah,
he
yeah.
has a hardware wallet and
He
he
does
has
the
24
24
words.
words?
And he knows
And your
where to
mom?
keep them safe and what's important.
Your dad should teach a class for the senior citizens of the world.
My in-laws, the same thing.
They should be in the same class.
Yeah,
Master's
probably.
class.
All right, let's move on. We could probably talk about this for the next half hour, and it would be a good conversation to have.
We're all in agreement. It's just there's a huge spectrum of users out there.
There are, absolutely. So one really important question I'd like to dig into is how can we ensure that we store our Bitcoin so that it can be truly unconfiscatable?
Have the private keys and make sure you're the full exclusive owner of those private keys. Right? It's no
Yes.
good if your private keys, you have it, but you have a lot of backups where your spouse, where your children all have the same copy of your private key. Then that gets dangerous.
So, you want to, if this is real money, right, real money to you, you probably want to learn how the devices that you're buying to store Bitcoin in work. You want to make sure that your private key is good. Okay, so you're not necessarily trusting the manufacturer. And this is for people who have more money, right? If you're just holding $20, whatever, right? But like, as it becomes more money to you, you definitely want to make sure that the private key was generated safely, that the device you are using is verifiable, that you're running, say, the latest firmware, because you don't want to be in a spot where the device that generates the private key for you maybe has a retirement attack or something like that, where the manufacturer could be either by a bug or maliciously know which private keys are being generated. This gets very technical very fast. Ideally is this: find people in the community that are trusted, that will probably point you to the right direction on where to read and sort of like what things you should look into as you generate your private key. In security, we call it key ceremony. It's when you put your tinfoil hat and you generate your private keys and you back them up in metal and you put them away. Because the keys are your money, essentially. right? Those words, whoever has them or whoever sees them can move your funds. So if you want that sovereignty, right, if you want to never be, say, robbed, you want to make sure that those keys are protected.
I want to make a point that we've heard of the concept, the weakest link in the chain, in the security chain, right? So to answer the question about how do you make sure it's unconfiscatable, you don't want to have weak links. But the reality is every seed phrase backup, those 24 words, is in clear text. It's in clear text. And if you handle it improperly, that is by far the weakest link of your overall crypto security, operational security. So if you handle your 24 words poorly, whether it's writing it down with pencil and paper, where other people, where the camera is around, right? That is the weakest link. So that's why even if you have the most secure hardware wallet, which this is not, by the way, even if you have the most secure hardware wallet, the weakest link is that piece of paper. I don't care if you laminate it or if you etch it onto steel card. It's all clear text. So if you don't protect that well, it's all pointless. So I'm just pointing these things out. So that's why there's some devices, you know, this is, I don't want to name brands, but sometimes the keys are in here, and you don't need to back anything up, but you have to trust this guy, and for small amounts, it might just work out. And this is unconfiscatable, right, in that sense, right? Maybe something like this, which you're familiar with.
Yep,
You don't have to back this up, but it just works. I'm glad I didn't put it in my back pocket because if I sat on it, it might have cracked. But aside from that, these are good devices, right?
Who generates the firmware?
So
Is it the firmware?
just a point of order. We're going to hold questions right till the end, just so we can get them on the mic.
I'll snag you.
Who answered?
We'll call on you, though. Cool. Any other thoughts on this question?
Just one idea on like seed phrases and stuff is I actually think we'll be in a place in the not too distant future where for the general user, seed phrases kind of disappear. I think it'll kind of be in the same way that like back in 2013, I think it was, when hierarchically deterministic wallets came out and we switched to seed phrases. Yeah, thank you. BIP32 was implemented. You know, before you had to generate a bunch of addresses and then back up your wallet again. And every time you received with a new address, you had to back up your wallet again, or you just lose it all. The seed phrases are actually a substantial improvement over the way it used to work. And I was really excited. I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is fantastic. And I think in that same way, when we have something like Taproot and the cost of having additional keys is non-existent, and then like a tool I've been using, a piece of software I've been using a lot recently that I'm just absolutely in love with, still beta, still plenty of kinks to work out, but it's called Nunchuck. And it's multi-sig, it's collaborative multi-sig, and you can have it such that, you know, with 5 of 7, like the trucker convoy used this, and it was like a 2 of 3, and then moved to a 3 of 5, et cetera, et cetera. But because of that, even if someone lost their key or their device, the funds were still safe. The funds could still be moved by the group of people. So I expect to see that probably in family situations, for like heirs and like will and like having lawyers as a part of a key agreement, all of this sort of stuff kind of become the norm in the future. And then when you lose your hardware wallet, there may actually just be a clause that says, if I lose my hardware wallet, well, I can just get my lawyer and 2 of my best friends to sign it, and then I'll get it back in a month. You know, so.
Yeah, but the
Question,
problem there is
how
if the
many
lawyer
here
of the 2
know-
friends signs it without your permission, then it's
How many people here know?
That's why there's a month time lock, because my key is dominant.
Yeah.
So if they do that with
It's
a
a
month and I
threshold.
see them try to steal it, well then I'm going to go punch both of my 2 friends in the face and move it to a different quorum, you know, different multi-sig.
How many of you know what Taproot is? Okay, so it's like slightly mixed, yeah. So it's just like, just briefly, it's like a new tech that's coming to Bitcoin. Okay, we kind of have it, but it's not fully deployed yet. Essentially, it's a new type of signature that allows you to do more complex thresholds of signatures, right? So, you know, you can have, so instead of just doing 2 out of 2, right, you can have a tree of like multiple levels of of qualifications that key might have, right? So maybe it needs one of the other keys, maybe it's just a smaller threshold. So it just gives us a lot more option when we create multi-sig, which really is going to be called MUSIG.
Yeah, the thing I want to point out there is I understand and appreciate all the technology and features the core developers have put into Bitcoin. I think for the geeks and high-level users, they're great, Taproot. But my observation of the real world is more complex, more combinations, more choices is actually bad for general security.
So
And
I don't
for
think we're
example-
arguing that. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
so
just
for
that.
example, I don't recommend, as much as NVK, talks about these advanced features for Bitcoin Taproot activation and so on, I actually don't recommend for the mass audience to ever do anything like that, time lock stuff. I don't recommend it. Because it's very easy. I've seen people make mistakes where you time lock something, you put in an extra 0 due to a fat finger, and you lock for 10 years or 100 years.
That's just a wallet problem.
Yeah, no, and also
That's a
you
development.
can
And
revert that.
again,
You can
for
double
the
spend it.
record, I'll declare here and on publicly, I don't recommend any sort of locking of your funds in that sense.
I think there's
Okay,
two
it's just-
separate
it's just
conversations
not-
going on.
not-
I think we're
not
just
needed.
trying to.
Of course it's
I think
separate.
there's interest from the crowd on
Do
like.
you agree with what I said?
I don't know what you said.
Well, you gotta learn to listen.
All right, let's move on to the next question. What are some of the common mistakes that a general Bitcoin user makes when it comes to storage and security?
I say not realizing how important their seed is, and if they put like a password backup or whatever, not realizing that, depending on if it's a bit 48 or something, not realizing that that is actually just as important as the private key. Just not understanding how the wallet is creating backups. Like as someone who, like my iPhone, I have a new one now, but my iPhone shit the bed on me like 3 weeks ago or something. And so I got a lesson in, okay, you shouldn't really just download a bunch of beta wallets and use them on the fly and throw money into them, because I had to restore like 22 wallets. But I got to do the restore process on all of them. I did get it all back, because I'm familiar with losing coins. Like, you've been in since 2011. Undoubtedly, you lost a key somewhere. Almost always, it's the user not understanding the basics of the tools, and that's why I think like incrementally improving, going to a mobile wallet that maybe has an option to just back up the wallet in your iCloud. Like I had like 4 or 5, I think, that do that by default, and so I just booted up my new phone and they were just there. I just installed it and it was like, here's your wallet again. And so, and a lot of that is wallet management. Like, what's the standard? And I expect to see far more standardization come about for a common way to do these things. That's just something that takes time, could be 5 years, 10 years.
So we see a lot of support tickets, right, from people who are essentially coming into our product from other products, or people who just see us as a source of knowledge for them sometimes. And, we will see things like, for example, widows that, were married to a programmer who made an extremely complex multi-sig wallet and didn't give the wife, like the details of that redeem script, and money's gone.
That's very sad.
You see, for example, people who didn't back up their seed in metal and the house burned down. Surprisingly enough, the least you see is people being robbed, right? Especially for North American customers. But it is really important that people do learn how it works. Because if you don't learn how it works, there is no 1-800-BITCOIN, please make it go backwards, right? Really, Bitcoin has no backseas. So, that's why we bang on this idea that you have to learn and just sort of like don't outsource all your thinking to the wallet and to the manufacturer or to the person that sort of like got you into this. Like, do put in the time, because that's the difference between you or your heirs redeeming those keys or not.
So I want to add, I agree with you very much. The knowledge is important, and one of the hardest things is backup management. Backup management is one of the hardest things because people don't understand that Bitcoin is decentralized. The information is the money. And if you mismanage information, you're mismanaging the money. If you're leaking the information, you're leaking the money. So that's one of the key things I try to emphasize in my book. And aside from the backup difficulty, the other hardest thing for people in terms of not losing funds is people generally, again, generalizing, okay? People have this concept where if something is advanced, that must be more secure, that must be good for me. And that is not the case. For most people, you don't want multi-sig. You don't want Taproot, you don't want lock verify stuff. You don't want those advanced features because they screw it up, right? You want simplicity, because simplicity gets you to where you want, and if you one day you develop the skills to do the more advanced stuff, then by all means do that. But too many people get it too deep. They get the water above their head and they screw up. Human mistakes. Human memory is fallible. Human, like even me, like 2 years ago, I had a ledger device. You type in the PIN code 3 times wrong, it flushes it out, right? I have several ledger devices. I'm very secure. I have these super ultra secret PIN codes, ones I never use. And because I never use it, I forgot about it. So I remembered on the 4th try, but by the 3rd try, I already wiped it out. I had to go back and recover from the steel plates. And where was that? It was at some other location. So you know, if I can fall into these traps, regular people will fall into it left and right. Who knows about the 25th word? Yeah, I'm glad only a few of you raised your hand because, frankly speaking, I don't know if that's going to do you any good. As NVK pointed out, the reality is we don't lose physical things as much as we think, right? We worry about hackers, but the reality is we should worry more about ourselves screwing up than the hackers trying to steal from you. Just a thought to share with everyone.
Okay. So security is always a little bit of a game. Where do you see us going in terms of future-proof best practices?
So I think we go back to Taproot here. So the beautiful thing about de-risking each of the, say, the signing keys, right, with like more complex scripting that's happening on the background, is that each device that you're using to have your quorum to move the money has less capability of screwing you, right? So it's too early days on this, but this is likely where this whole market is going. You know, there is a future where it's unlikely that we're even gonna have my products in the market anymore because they won't be needed. So you won't need your cold card because you're gonna have this multitude of devices that are capable of storing keys, not being single points of failure, and not being negative quorums for you. So like, they wouldn't be in a way that they could be played against you either. Just because it's this more complex scripting that it's unlikely that most people will even understand how they work from the outset. But the wallets are going in that direction. This is really like where a lot of the effort is going now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like I said, I think it will be more on the client side. Like, I mean, just talking about, like, Bobby was talking about is that he doesn't expect people will be using time lock because you could actually punch in an extra 0. Well, that's just something that a wallet just says, yeah, you just time lock this for 2,000 years. Are you sure you want to do this?
And it's
Before
fixable.
you sign, it is.
It's totally fixable. You can just double spend the original UTXO on a normal transaction, and then the time lock is irrelevant.
Is that you're saying, isn't that depending on which time lock you use, though?
No, you can just spend it.
There's the publish to an address time lock, and then there's the
Yeah,
it's
but
not
if
valid
you get
for
in
this time
mind,
lock.
it's
Well, whatever. Anyway, get a mind. But basically, I think that's just a client side issue, just to make sure that I mean, look at the number of things that users used to screw up that just the process of setting up a wallet has kind of just sorted out. Developers are like, okay, well, shit, we had 2,000 emails about this problem. Well, let's simplify this step of the process. And then the support tickets start to disappear. And I think particularly with the ability, with the new capabilities with Taproot and to have multiple additional clauses, you can have an address and a wallet that still is completely at your command with one key, but then also with Your lawyer has a 1-year time lock. With your family has a 6-month time lock, 3 of 5. Like, you can still just have these other things present. And the beauty of Taproot is that it's all behind a single signature, so it costs you nothing extra on chain to have those backups. I would do it. I would do it right now. I fully expect when a wallet comes out that just makes it click this, here are the keys, that I want to be a part of a backup key for all of my family. That's going to really simplify things because I know I'm going to be very, very serious about my backups, more so than they probably are. I generally think seed phrases, I don't know what the time frame is, but I just generally think they're going to disappear into the background.
There'll be a mix too, right? Because you can
Sure,
still
sure.
have.
I will still have a seed phrase.
No, but you can also have a seed phrase for some of the keys on your Taproot Musig thing, right? Like it really is like you can have your nuclear backup of last resort that's buried somewhere, right? Like and if something happens, you still have it, right? It's all about optionality, right? It's like the more options that we have, exactly.
So I agree with the seed phrases might one day go away because, frankly speaking, they're a great invention, they're a great improvement on the past, but frankly speaking, they're just not good enough for the 1 billion and the next 5 billion people. So I think the real challenge is not better security. Again, let me repeat that. The real challenge is not better security. The cases of problems with cryptocurrency storage is not about hackers stealing your keys through hacking your hardware wallet. It's not that. I think the challenge we face as an industry, as an ecosystem, is ease of use. Too many people these days are getting on board cryptocurrency by putting their coins on exchanges and custodial platforms. What we want is better solutions and more educations to convince these users to take their coins and manage it themselves, self-key management. That's what we want to see. Coinbase is very successful, so are other custodial platforms, right? What I hate to see in the next 5 years, 10 years, is where 80, 90% of the coins are actually stored on these large custodial solutions where they can get hacked, where they can be regulated by governments, telling them not to send accounts and addresses to Russians or Ukrainians or XYZ groups of people, Canadians, truckers, and stuff like that. This is where it gets really dangerous. What we want as an industry, and I need all of your help, we need all of your help to educate our friends and family, manage your own private keys. I don't care if it's through the 24 words or through other devices that's more simple. There's a variety of choices, but manage it well, and remember that if you do manage clear text words, such as 24-word seeds, be careful because that is the weakest link. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
One final question. We're going to end with a little bit of a controversial one. There's a like
Wow.
we haven't been talking about that already. There's a common misconception that governments can shut down Bitcoin. Why is this not true?
Well, it is true. No, just kidding.
Yeah, so like Bitcoin is post-national, right? Like it's not a democracy. It's just simply like a rough consensus system where you have people running their own nodes, and that's really all it counts. It's a pure selfish endeavor, right? You are self-verifying the transactions, you have a copy of the whole ledger, and you are also validating the consensus rules on your own node. So there really is nothing for the government to go after. I mean, they can go after you, they can try to go after electricity, right? But you can't really shoot math. So until you can find a way to shoot math, governments can't really stop Bitcoin.
Yeah, you can't change the rules of math. I agree very much. So to add to that, I was sort of joking about governments can. There actually are ways for the government to shut down Bitcoin. Again, I'm going to confine this, okay? The solution is certain countries can one country or countries can shut down Bitcoin for the country, but it's very drastic. It would mean shutting down electricity, the power grid for the whole thing, and shutting down communications. And then all you're left with pockets of people using solar and using satellite transmissions. Okay, so that is the severe thing. But in doing so, the cost is humongous, right? It'll affect the economy and so on. I'm in touch with, in China, with bankers in China, central bankers. They always come to me for questions and advice. And they try to come up with proposals to screen Bitcoin transactions to sort of prevent money laundering. And I'm like, it's futile. Don't bother. And I explain to them why. Right? I say, if you really want to shut it down, you have to shut down the whole power grid, turn off the whole internet system, because it's in the end, it's just information. Information can travel freely around the world. It's very porous. I mean, all the internet's satellite links, cell phone, and all that stuff. Even what they call pigeon carrier, really slow bit rate kind of thing. So it's very hard for governments to shut down. So I don't think it's controversial at all.
Yeah, I basically agree with all that. I will add that, this is basically how the block size debate came about, is understanding where the attack vectors are for censorship and trying to shut off or segment areas of the network. Because Bitcoin is ultimately a consensus mechanism, and it fails if everyone is not on the same consensus. It is essentially a forced fork because information cannot pass some specific barrier. A great example is the Great Firewall of China, because they do a lot to attempt to control what information, like they've tried to shut down Tor in China a number of times, and then, a good update and it starts to leak back through. But that's the beauty of Bitcoin being a full node. Like a full node is Bitcoin. That is all it is. And if we are all running it, if there are hundreds of thousands of people all over the world running it, and it is nimble, it takes 2 days to boot up a node when you've had your server shut down, or when they tried to break it at the Great Firewall of China or whatever. And if you have just the slightest crack in that data, which the internet is just full of cracks. Like, that's the beauty of the internet, right? It's decentralized. You can send information over satellite, but only if it's a small stream of data can you squeeze it through every single crack and make sure that consensus remains. And that's why there's a satellite network that broadcasts Bitcoin blocks to like 80% of the geographic, world. You did the ham radio thing from up in Canada above the Great Lakes all the way to Los Angeles or something like
That's
that,
right.
Yeah. You can send Bitcoin transactions
On
that
5
way.
watts.
Yeah, on 5 watts.
That's really good.
As long as the consensus layer requires a small amount of data, you're able to maintain consensus, you're able to keep Bitcoin, and ultimately when governments can't shut down BitTorrent, shutting down Bitcoin is going to be a whole new sort of fun and just angry annoyance.
Every time, part of the anti-fragility of it is that every time they try to do something against Bitcoin, they fail miserably, right? You look at China ban mining, right? 30% of the hash rate disappeared in China, and 6 months later it showed up in Texas, and now Texas is like this hotbed of mining, right?
Well, not just Texas, it's more decentralized than ever. So it's actually a good thing. It's better.
So we need to, we actually don't have time for questions, unfortunately, but please do come up and ask any one of the panelists, myself, if you have questions after. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I'll take questions at my booth. I'm sending books and giving them for free, okay? Thank you all.